Hey everybody, thanks for joining. We're really excited to talk to you today about the OCI DevOps service that we recently launched. Today we're going to show you how you can automate your deployments of software to OCI platforms. My name is Jonathan Schreiber. I'm a product manager in the OCI Developer Services Group.
Hello, my name is Ophelia Hernandez. I will also be presenting today. I'm Director of Software Development, also in OCI Developer Services. Jonathan is going to start off by talking us through what exactly is DevOps.
Awesome. Thanks, Ophelia. So we're going to be showing you our service and we're going to be talking about some of the things that are coming in the future. So I got to show you this slide so we're all blessed by Oracle Legal. So what we're going to do today is we're going to show you the OCI DevOps service, and we're going to show you how you can automate the delivery of your software to OCI platforms. That's kind of the introduction of this native CI/CD platform. We're going to have a demo coming up later. So we'll try to get through these slides as fast as we can so you can see our demo. And we're going to show how you can connect your existing CI, so Jenkins, GitLab, GitHub Actions that you might be using now, to automated deployments. And we're going to leave you with some next steps for how to get started using OCI DevOps service yourself. Okay, so what do you even really mean by DevOps? When we think about DevOps, it's kind of like a larger cultural concept. So it can mean sort of a very kind of large breadth of things about, really, I think the goal though of DevOps is for us to talk about how we continually improve the way that we work together as a team. When we talk to our customers, we kind of see that they have both the capabilities that they've already built and the things that they're working on. And I think we're always working on getting better as a team in how we deliver software. So we're never kind of like, hey, I'm done with DevOps. It's more like a practice. So like my yoga practice, in which I'm always trying to improve. Today, so while it can be really expansive and cover kind of the planning, sprint planning, product process, or sort of after you've released, how you monitor and your observability strategy, what we're going to focus on today is really that inner loop of CI/CD. So the OCI DevOps platform the OCI DevOps service is a CI/CD platform. We're really looking at the build, test, release, and deploy phases kind of in this infinite loop. So good news, you've probably seen this slide before if you've seen some of the other presentations, but DevOps is really core to a well-architected strategy. So when we look through the kind of the pillars here, the 9 pillars, we're really hitting these points and supporting them with a strong DevOps practice and strong DevOps capabilities. So think about this almost as like the foundation for the rest of your well-architected architecture. In terms of security and compliance, we're going to show how we integrate in with the security features of OKE and the container registry. Performance, you want your team to be able to deploy as much as they want to. You don't want to be held back by your process so that your team is able to get features out to customers as quickly as you can. And with a confidence, when we talk about resiliency, you want to have the confidence that the features that you build are going to work, that you don't push out a new change and then it breaks production. So we want that balance of both speed, so the velocity of our software delivery, and confidence that it's going to work. So how do we do that? What are the kind of principles? So we talked about the kind of continuous integration. So that's where you know this. And so just stating the obvious, when you make a commit, you want to make sure that it's going to work. So you made a feature and you're going to test it before you go build the artifacts and push it out to an environment. That's continuous integration. That's automated. The one piece that we see that our customers are not, or developers aren't often as automated with is the continuous delivery and deployment. So the CD can be a little bit ambiguous, right? The D could be delivery. That's where your packages move to the artifact repos. Continuous deployment would be if every commit that you have to your main branch goes to production. So some teams are just not ready for that kind of automation, but you can still automate the delivery of your recent release to your platforms, and then you go through your process on how you build confidence and to make that production release. Packaging and shipping up your application as lightweight containers, that is core to their DevOps service that we support both container platforms and non-container platforms, because we know that you still may be shipping some VM images or just processes that you're deploying to your VM your OCI VMs. You're going to be able to use fully managed services. So the OCI DevOps service is fully managed. You don't have to install Jenkins and manage it on your own infrastructure. And then you can manage your pipeline. So the definition of how you deploy, that you can save back as code using Terraform. So this is this great kind of like synergy that you get between OCI's APIs and Terraform and the resource manager service. If you use it, you can take your pipeline and then it's code, check it into your Git repo. And then sort of if you make changes, you know what changed, and then you can apply that with Terraform. And we talked about the security a little bit already between OKE deployments and validating your artifacts and that there are no vulnerabilities in those containers for the registry. So DevOps performance. What do we mean by sort of doing DevOps well? We can think of kind of high performers and teams that are kind of like working to become high performers, which we might call low. One of the kind of great things that's just out there is a body of research that's been done by the DevOps Research Assessment Group. They started surveying developers kind of in 2017 around there, around how they work. So how do they deliver software to production? How do they sort of do their work? And what they found is that an investment in DevOps capabilities led to kind of increased business performance. So increasing the organizational goals. So whether that's revenue, driving market share, depending on your company, you're in a competitive landscape and you're trying to do well. And what they found is that the DevOps maturity and DevOps capabilities led to increased business success. DevOps high performance means that customers are able to release more frequently and with confidence. So there isn't that trade-off, that you're able to automate your delivery and your deployment, and that you do it with confidence that you're not causing an issue in production. So you have less errors, but high success rate. And then if there is an error, you can recover it quickly. So that combination of capabilities really led teams to be able to have high performance. So we're going to show you today this automation piece for continuous delivery and deployment. You'll continue to, and we'll show you how you can commit to your existing Git repos, build with your existing CI system, and then deliver your artifacts to OCI repositories, then pull from those repositories in our pipeline to show how you automate the deployment to OCI platforms. So why do we want to do this? Well, we're with the OCI DevOps service, you're able to deploy in a native way to OCI platforms. So that is our Kubernetes, managed Kubernetes, OKE, functions, and instance groups. Integrate with your existing CI platform. And then we talked about this. We'll show you how you can roll back. Okay, over to you, Ophelia.
Thank you, Jonathan. So why should you use DevOps service? These are a few of the benefits. One is automation. We support continuous delivery without having to do much work besides the initial setup. Using DevOps to deploy OCI from within OCI is secure by default. So security, we take advantage of our already built-in OCI security. We have CloudGuard, IAM, security zones, all that can be used with our deployment pipelines. And governance, you want to see end-to-end who clicked deployment, what happened, what was delivered where, and if it failed, how do you fix it? And so the governance is really important and critical in any DevOps anywhere. Next slide. Another benefit is it's fully managed. So this is a cloud native deployment pipeline. You don't have to manage any servers. OCI is taking care of it for you. We prevent vulnerabilities. If you use our OCIR, you can use container scanning built into OCI, so trusted artifacts, and CI/CD workflow. We don't currently have CI, but we are adding it in the future. So in the future, you can get complete CI/CD all without ever leaving OCI. Next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how do you get started and what did we actually deliver. We keep talking CI/CD. There's even CI/CD sometimes, but for now, the only thing we did was continuous delivery / deployment. So what do you need to do that? You need a software artifact. What is an artifact? It's some package of code that someone in your company has built or you yourself as a developer has built. So it's a byproduct of software development. It can be anything. We have container images, it could be a text file, a jar. There's probably 100 different types that you may want to deploy anywhere. Currently, we don't support every single type, but we do support the following OCI artifact repositories: container image repository, the new artifact registry, and inline artifacts. So if you don't want to use either and you just want to type in a file like a manifest or a YAML, we also support that. You need to get that set up first. So you already have a CI, you need to put your artifacts somewhere in OCI. And the second thing you need is environments. Environments are basically where you're going to put this artifact. In our platform, we currently support compute hosts, Oracle Container Engine, Kubernetes, and functions. And the next piece of this is going to be Jonathan's demo. He's going to walk you through how you can actually run one of the pipelines and see it in action.
Cool. Okay, thanks, Sophia. All right, let's get into the fun stuff. Okay, so first, when I head over to, first I need to go to the OCI DevOps service. So we can find it kind of in search, DevOps, and I'm going to go to the DevOps overview. To get started, we kind of group together the resources that you need in order to automate your deployments in one place. So the first thing that you'll do is create a project and then use that to hold your environments, your artifacts, and your deployment pipelines. So let me show you what those are and how you use them together to automate deployments. So I have an existing project here for Dev Live. And let's say that I want to just create a really simple, I just want to kind of check this out and get started. So an environment is the first thing that I'm going to make. An environment is the pointer to the destination where I'm going to sort of deploy my software. So here I'm going to get started with an OKE, and I'm going to make a new environment to deploy to an OKE cluster that's in Frankfurt. One of the great things about the OCI DevOps service is, like we said, you can deploy across the regions of your dependency. So here, I'm using Ashburn. It's my home region, but I want to deploy to Frankfurt. So I'm going to say this is my OK Frankfurt cluster. And I'm going to choose it, kind of jump over here to Frankfurt. And here it is. Okay, so now I've got the where am I deploying my Frankfurt cluster. And now I want to define, hey, what am I deploying? And so we do that by creating these pointers to the artifact repos that you're going to use. So like Ophelia said, that can be the artifact registry. It can be a container image registry repository, or you can just sort of do a quick test by pasting in some text. All right, so here I have an artifact that I'm going to use, which is my Hello World OKE manifest. So on this one, I've pointed it to the artifact repository that already exists, Hello World Kubernetes manifest. So I've got an artifact that already exists, and I'm going to use that artifact to then deploy to that Frankfurt cluster. So let's go make the simplest pipeline, which is just one stage. Simplest pipeline. Okay. So I'm going to add a stage here. So here are the choices that you have. So we talked about, hey, you can deploy to the different kind of platforms that we have. So Kubernetes, instance groups, and functions. And you can kind of control the flow and the automation. And we'll go into those stages in a little bit. But we're just doing the kind of the most basic is just one stage. Kind of, this is kind of where we're getting started with our automation. So deploy to Frankfurt. So here we're going to choose. So we've got Frankfurt, Phoenix, and then 2 clusters in Ashburn. So choose Frankfurt, and then select my manifest. So hello world. Here we're able to, we talked about that automatic rollbacks. So if I want to automatically roll it back, if it fails, then I'll select yes. We'll do that here. So I've got it, and I'm going to set up a couple parameters. So in my manifest, I have two places that I use. We have a templating language that we can use for you to replace text in your configuration with kind of deploy time information. So here, I can take a look at that manifest that I have. And I have these two places. So here's our kind of like parameter syntax, kind of standard sort of bash parameterization. So $ bracket, and then I'm going to replace the namespace. And then which version of the container, I'm going to use this parameter to say what version. So I've pushed a number of containers already from my build over into this OCI Aruba. I'm going to set those up. Say 1.58. Which version of the container? And then namespace, which namespace? Demo, okay, dev, and which namespace? All right. So we're ready to run this now. So one of the nice things that we have is that we make sure that when you run the pipeline, it's the pipeline that you just made. So we're waiting for that update to happen so that you don't run on a previous version. That's one of the kind of like built-in checks that we have. So this is your now deployment dashboard. So this is a place that you can go if you need to monitor real time what the progress is of your deployment. We have this so that you can monitor the logs that are coming back from the steps that are being taken. And then you can see the stages that are being run. So yellow here means it's active. Obviously, we can get more complex kinds of pipelines. You can run pipelines serially, or you can run the stages in your pipeline serially, or you can have parallel stages in order to kind of fan out to a release across regions. And we're going to show you that in a little bit as well. All right, we're going to let this go. And we kind of showed you the resources that you have now to kind of create a pipeline. So an environment, that's where it's going. The artifact, that's the software package that you're going to deploy. And then your pipeline, which is your logic, right? That's your workflow, your series of stages to automate your deployment. And so this is just, it's sort of deploying, we're getting the, it's getting the authentication back, and then it's going to apply the manifest. The manifests are applied via Kubernetes server-side apply. Oh, and so we're successful. That's great. So let's go check it out. Here's a list of all of our deployments. So you can go back in history. Ophelia talked about that kind of governance and audit. We're gonna build up a list of all the deployments. Here we go. All right, let's check it out. All right, so here it is, 1.58. I did this for a demo for Dan. Hi, Dan. So that's our current version that we have now. All right, so that's the kind of like the ABCs with a really simple. So let me show you kind of how we can next integrate with our CI system. So I talked about Jenkins. Let me show you kicking off a change. So I'm going to make a change now to this application that I'm going to containerize and push out to an OK cluster. And we're going to get a little bit more kind of a real customer pipeline with some complexity in it, because sometimes, we usually don't, if this was production, we don't really deploy just to production unless it's just Ophelia and me messing around. In a real use case, we're going to deploy to a series of environments and run tests before we get to production so that we know that it's safe to deploy. We have confidence and are not, creating errors. So let me make that change right now. So not in the manifest, but here in my little simple hello world Java, all it does is print out its name and its version. So it was test right now. Let's do dev live session. Okay, save that. And then stage it. So demo for dev live. And push this up into GitHub. Okay, so we made that little change. And now I want to build it. So I'm going to go over to Jenkins. So here's a Jenkins, and I'm going to start a run of Jenkins. And then I'm going to show you kind of how we set up this Jenkins integration. So we have these steps. We're going to check out the code, run a Maven build to build my jar, then containerize it, build the container image with Docker, and push it to OCR. And then when that's successful, so then we can trigger the deployment. We obviously don't want to start the new DevOps service deployment before the latest image is actually on OCR. So how did we set that up? Let's check it out. The first thing is we have a Jenkins plugin. So you can go here to the OCI docs and find links to install the Jenkins, the OCI DevOps plugin for Jenkins. It's on GitHub and is published in the Jenkins plugin repository. But if you want to check out more info, you can go to GitHub and you can download, build it yourself. And if you have a feature, you should go contribute a pull request and make an issue. The Jenkins plugin exposes two new basically steps that you can add into your plugin. So here I've created a new job, a new pipeline job in Jenkins. And here's my pipeline script. So I'm going to check out my Git repo, then build it. And then these are just standard kind of steps already. But here are the new ones that I get from the Jenkins plugin is to trigger a deployment. So here's an OCI deployment, and then I basically am able to pass it arguments, and then I've set up my auth, and then my pipeline ID. So here's the pipeline that I'm going to deploy. So I take that OCID, and I'm going to do it asynchronously. So if it fires and is successful, then I'll return success here. And then I'm going to go over and see how the pipeline is running in the OCI DevOps service. So let's go check on this. Great, so I'm pushing the image, so just take a little bit longer. So let's go look. That is a different pipeline because I wanted to kind of add a little bit more complexity. So let's look at the pipeline that is going to be triggered. Okay, so we got the basics down with simplest pipeline, but here's my dev live hello world. So I've introduced a little bit more complexity. First, I want to deploy to the dev environment. So I set up an environment for my Ashburn cluster that's pointed to dev. Then I want to validate it. So what's really cool is that you can kind of run custom logic in your pipeline by invoking a function. So I set up a function that's just a simple test suite to kind of validate the release version. And it's going to fire and run that function. And I can pass through arguments with basically like another manifest. So I created an artifact of the arguments that I can pass the function. And so release to dev, then run this integration test. And then if that passes, we'll release to production. So that's my kind of like more complex, a little bit closer to what a real world deployment pipeline may be. I have the same parameters. So let's take a look at these deployments. So here are the previous ones that succeeded and failed. And then when Jenkins finishes pushing that image to OCR, we're going to trigger a deployment here. So earlier ones were failing. I don't know, I must have been messing around, seeing what was going to happen. Okay, so let's say that I talked about a couple more things I want to do here. So let's say this is fully automated, so there's no costs. Once this integration test passes, then I'm going to release to production. I want to do two things here to kind of show additional kind of logic that we can add into our deployment pipeline. One is to add an approval. Let's say that we have a kind of a release process where I actually need to get approval. Maybe Ophelia needs to give me a thumbs up on my team before we go to production. We can do that here by adding another stage in my pipeline. And now let's go take a look at these control stages. So integrations I've already used because I'm running my integration suite with a function. But here I want to pause the deployment for approvals. So I'm going to say get release management, get release approval. This is the number of approvers. Like we said, the DevOps service is integrated, of course, with the rest of the OCI platform, so we can control who can approve with an IAM groups and permissions. So if you have permission to access this resource, then you can be an approver for this pipeline. So now I've added an approval stage. And then let's say now I want to, oh, here it is. There's my approval. See, we added it. Let's say now that I want to release to more than just Ashburn. So remember I created that Frankfurt cluster, and I should have one already for Phoenix. So I want to show you how I can fan out here at the end with parallel stages to do a deployment that's across regions. So I'm going to add parallel stages now. Same thing here. So I'm going to choose to deploy to OK. So now let's release to Phoenix. So Phoenix, prod. I'm going to select the Phoenix environment. And then select again the artifact. And then one more. We'll go to Phoenix. I mean, go to Frankfurt. Okay. So now we have a pipeline. Now we have a pipeline, and zoom in here a little bit, that is testing my dev release, getting approval, and then fanning out to the 3 regions that I want to deploy to. Okay. So let's check this out. Okay, deploying from Jenkins. Deploying to prod. Oh, wow. Okay. So we had some issue here, and let's check it out. So here are the logs, and we can look at what came back from our deployment. So can investigate, oh, you know what? This prod, the namespace doesn't exist. Okay. So what we can do here with a failed step is we can roll it back. So we talked about the automatic rollback and manual rollback. Here in this pipeline, this step failed. So we can see, hey, why did it fail? 1.13. And it's missing namespace. So I said, wait, we're expecting a namespace, but it's not there. How's that going to work? So we can go back to the previous successful deployments. So here's one. So 1.12 worked. So let's roll back to that. So 1.12 and then namespace. Okay. That. Now we're going to create a new deployment just for this one stage. So the way that we do rollbacks are that we can't assume that we understand the integration and the kind of dependencies between the stages of your pipeline. So what we do is roll back one failed stage at a time. If there's more things that failed, then you would roll back each of those stages individually. So this is going to start a new deployment of this manifest into prod in order to restore it to a healthy state. Okay, let's check dev because that succeeded. So here's our dev. So there we go. Hello World Dev Live session 1.13. All right, Ophelia, I think over to you to show how we can deploy to functions from the OCI DevOps service.
First, I'm going to talk about what is a function, specifically in OCI. It is a fully managed, multi-tenant, highly scalable, on-demand function as a service platform. You can access it via applications. These are my applications. I have already created one so that I don't have to set it up from scratch. Mine is called Demo App. I have two functions here. One is for development and one is for production. They both have the exact same version, 0.0.2 of my Hello World function. I'm also showing Cloud Shell here on the bottom, which is a web browser-based terminal accessible from the Oracle Cloud Console. It allows you to manage OCI resources without leaving OCI using the CLI. Right here, I have the command already written. I'm going to reuse it for showing you that prod hello Java function is functioning. It's telling me hello world. So version 2 of my code is hello world. Now I'm going to go over to DevOps. I'm going to start out in my project, which I have set up. Mine is DevOps CI/CD. This is demoing the first phase of DevOps, allowing you to deploy from OCI to OCI. When I click this, on the left, you're going to see parts of phase 2, which we are not going to dive deep into, but you will see them available because I'm part of the team that's helping to build phase 2. So ignore the magic on the left. I know you're excited about builds, build history, code repositories, but that's coming in the future. I've already set up my environment, as Jonathan mentioned. My two that I'm using for my demo are dev hello world function and prod Ashburn hello world function. I also have my artifact already set up, hello world Java. It's a Docker image in the OCIR registry. So I will open my pipeline, which was currently in a green status. I have run this many times before. If we go to my deployments tab, we will see that I've been successful mostly. I did have one time it failed, but so I'm feeling pretty good that this is a really stable pipeline. My first step will be deploy dev hello world function. Usually you want to do this to make sure any code a developer checks in and uploads to your artifact repositories is not going to break production. If this step fails, we never go to production. So I will show you that sample here. So say I mess up something when I'm doing deployment and I type in a wrong version or deploy a wrong version. I know 0.0.x doesn't exist. I'm going to run it. Click Start Manual Run. You get to the fancy screen that Jonathan was showing you. Let's see what happens. These steps, since they're one on top of the other, prod is blocked by dev. You can deploy these at the exact same time, then they would not be blocked. So if one failed, the other would continue to run. On the right, these logs are coming from OCI logging service. So this is built into OCI. You can go outside to the logging service in the console, which is here, and actually view all the logs across your project and pipelines in one place. So it failed. If I go back here, I'm like worried production's down or something. Run my production function again. Nope, it's still working. So it didn't try to break production. I'm going to try this again, but with a version I know exists. So we just built Hello World 2. It is version 3 of my function. Starting the run again. Crossing my fingers, hoping everything works, just like every developer does every time they check in code. Let's all hold our breath. Hopefully we get green. The color coding here, green is successful, yellow's in progress, and red is failed or canceled. So if you decide to stop, it'll also be red. So this time dev was successful, which means I am going to deploy to production. So let's hope this goes well also. Both were successful. Deployed function and it checked the status. I'm going to go back to my Technically, I don't need 2 tabs, but I wanted to show you this full screen. I could have popped up Cloud Shell right in this screen and shown you all from the same console, but I like having multiple tabs. So if I run this again, hello world 2. And if I go up here on the top of my screen, this function, if you can see it, it is now 0.0.3. So nothing was updated previously until it became successful. Then now dev and prod are both at 0.0.3, and I'm hello world 2. You can do functions in different regions from the same project. You will need to deploy your artifacts to those other regions to make sure it works. I did not want to do such a complicated pipeline for functions. Thank you for watching our demo. I think we have some time for question and answers now. So now we're going to have some questions and answers. I'm going to go through the questions, and hopefully Jonathan has the answers. We received these earlier.
I hope so. Ophelia, congratulations on the successful release.
Thank you. Number 1, is this a free service?
Yes, great question. Really, so like Ophelia, we kind of talked a little bit before. You pay for the platforms that you're deploying to, right? So OK instance groups and functions, and automating the deployment. So using DevOps service to automate your deployments with deployment pipelines is free. We want to make it really easier for developers to build, test, and deploy their software to OCI. And so this is a free service.
That's great to hear. Next, how do I manage the security of my project to make sure everyone in my company isn't messing with my deployment or DevOps projects?
Totally. We know that we want to make sure that we have some control over who can run deployments and what kind of permissions we have. We're fully integrated, the OCI DevOps service is fully integrated with OCI's IAM, identity and permission system. So you can create groups that have access to your project. And then within your project, you could create more granular access, say, to people who are able to run your pipeline versus make edits to your pipeline. And that may be kind of a way to kind of structure your team so that you give permission to people who you want to be able to kind of go do the operations versus who are actually doing the setup of your pipeline.
Nice. We are all about security at OCI. Do you support pipelines as code?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We know that there's a lot of advantages to kind of having the configuration that you're working with, whether it's infrastructure or the build and deployment pipeline as code. So you saw my Jenkins file. I have that checked into my Git repo for my Jenkins pipeline. For the deployment side, the deployment pipeline, you are able to create that deployment pipeline with all OCI services. So you may create it in the console to get started. Then you might say create it with the API or the CLI to make your pipeline. Once you've created your pipeline, then you can export it as Terraform and basically sort of say, hey, here's my pipeline as Terraform, and take that Terraform stack or definition and check it into your repo. And then you have basically your pipeline as code. We're using Terraform as the definition language, or HCL rather, as the definition language.
Thanks, Jonathan. I think that's all the time we have for Q&A. Do you want to wrap us up?
Oh yeah, thanks. So what's next? How can I get started? We recommend checking out our reference architecture. So these are solutions that we published using Terraform stack for you to just quickly kind of set up some of these example hello worlds to platforms. Let me show you just a little bit. So here. So here you go. So we've published this article, and you can go down and here it is in the deploy. So when you deploy to Oracle Cloud, this will take a Terraform stack, and you're able to run it in Resource Manager and then set up that example. So you can get started right away with this. And you can read a little bit more on our website. And then to get started, if you don't have an Oracle Cloud account right now, you should right now just go sign up. You can get a free trial, and then there's a number of services that are always free from our free tier.